Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Leah Brathwaite here. This is the first time that you are joining me live. Welcome. I am the founder and creator of the Live Free Lifestyle Inc. I am an author, a mentor, and a coach, and I am so excited to be having this live conversation today. I am going to be joined by one of my nearest and dearest soul sisters, Kylie McBeath, and we are going to be chatting all about people pleasing and codependency. And I'm super excited about this conversation because Kylie is going to be joining me inside of the Live Free Lifestyle, which is my signature program, and offering an incredible workshop specifically on this subject. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Live Free Lifestyle as the coaching program, it is a 12-week intensive program where we bring you back to your most authentic self. By we, I mean I am your guide, but you are the one finding the answers for yourself. You are the one reconnecting with your truth, your authentic voice, your most empowered self, so that you can create the life that you are meant to be living. We are all subject to conditioning in our lives, whether it's from our parents, from our religion, from our society, and those conditions create these mindsets and beliefs that have the tendency and the potential to keep us limited, to keep us small, to keep us stuck, frustrated, unfulfilled in our lives. And so by going through this process, by taking the time to go on the inward journey of self-discovery, we work through your mindset, your limiting self-sabotaging beliefs. We work through your energy, aligning your energetic system so that you are your most magnetic self. We work through healing your heart and opening it up to the infinite love, potential, and connections that are meant to be in your world. And we reconnect you to your soul so that you can be aligned with your dreams, your mission, your purpose, and your potential. So Kylie is going to be joining me soon. I see her there. If you are joining in, say hello. Kayla, I see you. All right, Kai, let me get you in here. Let's see if we can do this. Whee! We did it!
Hi, beautiful.
Hi, gorgeous. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm so happy to see your face. I'm always just so happy to just see your beaming light face.
I feel the same way about you. Every single time I'm like, Leah is just such a ray of sunshine. That doesn't mean you have depth or the whole spectrum, but it's just like you just feel good to be around, and it's always so nice to be in your presence. How are
Same,
you?
same. I'm
How are you
good.
doing?
Good. We are back to gray skies in Vancouver. We had like the most incredible sunshine for like 2 days. And now we're back to regular Vancouver programming, but it's okay. I got my fill of vitamin D, so I'm good.
I don't miss that, but I do miss Vancouver. So I was like, I miss the rainforest though. So
Yes. Oh my gosh. The rainforest in the rain is the most magical thing. So that's where I spend all my time.
yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this chat this morning. And I'm so excited to have you in the program as well to teach about this, because this is something that I look to you and I admire the way that you speak to it with such eloquence. And I know that we have similar journeys in our unwinding and unraveling of the people pleasing and codependency tendencies. So I was like, you are the perfect person for this. You have just such an open way of sharing and a depth of wisdom in this department. So it's kind of be coming in at the absolute perfect time in this program. And I really just want to share this information with people, whether they join or not, to understand a little bit more about what it's all about, to have people-pleasing tendencies, to have
What it's all about.
codependent tendencies, because they're buzzy words that get thrown around quite a bit. And some people will categorize something as being codependent or people pleasing when it's really just being a nurturing human. And some people will say they're being a nurturing human when really it's part of a deeper pattern that is limiting or detrimental in a certain way. So it's so funny that to share a little bit about Kai and I's story, when we were planning to do this live the first time, we were both trying to like get it, but like we were both trying to like accommodate to each other and get it right and like force something that really was like, wait, we had to check in with ourselves and be like, wait, what are we actually doing here? So no matter how much work you do around this subject, there's always little threads and tendrils that can permeate, and it's this constant evolutionary experience to notice them, compassionately unwind them,
Yeah.
and move in a different way. So we had to reschedule our first live. Here we are now at the perfect time. And I'm so excited to dive into this with you.
Yeah, likewise. And I'm so grateful to be able to dance and be of service in your container and your live free lifestyle. I know it's going to be potent because
Thank you.
I obviously as your friend, but also in sisterhood council with you, just the mirror you hold and the invitation you, um, yeah, hold as well for all of us to step into this more aligned, liberated lens and way of being and way of living is really powerful. So as always, such an honor to dance with you, and I'm so happy we find the right time and the right day. Of course, Valentine's Day,
I
which
know, right?
what a perfect day to talk about codependency.
So funny.
But yeah, it is a buzzy word, right? Codependency,
Yeah.
people pleasing, and I use them.
Yeah, me
I'm one of
too.
the ones that's like, yeah, I'll throw that word around. So would it be supportive for me to kind of like lay down a contextual framework as to how I orient towards that word?
That's exactly what I have, like a couple of notes so
Oh,
that
you
we
do?
don't get sidetracked into a vortex, because I know I want to keep this within like our time frame of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly where I wanted to go first, to just sort of like define, like, how do you define people pleasing and codependency?
Yeah. So I love that you have bullet points because that's supportive. I'm a vortexer, so I can.
Me too.
Where did we go? I'm not
I
sure.
know.
Um, yeah. So to bring us back to the topic of conversation, codependency, I was on a call with one of my mentors a couple of years ago, and he said something that really just shook my core. And he basically said, for me, in my relational context or dynamic, he was like, man equals mother. And I'm in
Mm.
a, I'm was in a heteronormative, still am in a heteronormative relationship. And I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? And he basically said, until you do the mother work and heal your core attachment, you will continue to repeat these patterns. And he said at the root of it was, at the root of codependency was three things. Is like, at a very young age, we learned to disconnect from ourself and to orient around
Mhm.
mother or primary caregiver in
Mhm.
order to manage the external environment.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm going to leave me, jump out of my physical body and my internal experience to orient my consciousness around your nervous system, around your states, around your needs, around your desires, around your emotions. And um, and that's what happens, right? That's what's coded into our system, especially if we have an environment where there's instability or a lack of consistency in our attachment figures. And I don't coach or use shame or blame in any of my teaching. It's just parenting is hard enough as it is. And in the systems that we live in, it's even compounded. So just deep bows to all the mothers, all the parents,
Yeah.
all of the caretakers. I'm like, it's no joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what really gets coded into our system is, in order to source safety and security, I learned that I need to orient my consciousness around you and be able to predict what it is that you need, want, desire in order for the peace to be maintained, in order for me to feel safe. And while that looks like empathy for a lot of us, underneath it is actually your need and desire to feel safe.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's no shame in that, because safety is number one in our systems. And until we feel safe, we can't necessarily shift out of these patterns and dynamics. So what I was noticing in my previous relationship dynamic with Mark, was most of my consciousness was split from my own body. I was orienting around him, saying what I needed to say, going along to get along in order to preserve the attachment, because that's how I had sourced safety and security my whole life. And then, of course, you get so far away from your truth, from your essence, from your own sense of self, that eventually the body, at least for me in my experience, the body breaks down and is like, yo, this is not sustainable. This is not going to work. Something has to shift.
Yes.
And that's when that rupture occurred, was like, okay, what is actually true for me in this moment? What's true for me is, for whatever reason, I don't know how to create a liberated relationship bond, if you will, because the only thing coded in my nervous system at the core was codependency, was self-abandonment. And really that's what people pleasing is managing and orienting around other people's experience to source safety and security.
Yes, 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 yes. I love that. Like it's not like a malicious bad thing. There's no shame associated with it. And I love, like, we have very similar teachings that it's not a shame-based, you're bad because you do this. It's often because you have such a big heart. It's often because you are so concerned with like your environment and feeling safe and making sure that everybody feels safe and okay. But I love to bring it back to that idea of parenting. Like, you can't give what you don't have. So
Right.
these are codes and these are programs and these are ways of being that, not to blame parents or not to remove any responsibility either, but that it's generational. These things are passed down. Like, if you don't know how to orient within your own system, you can't offer that to a child. You can't model that sort of
Right.
relationing, like that relating or behavior. So it's something that everybody has an experience with, not through any sort of toxicity or badness, but just because it's the way that much of our foundational upbringing has been. And our parents and their parents and their parents, it was really about safety and making it through the day sort of thing, not so much worrying about our internal landscape and how we're feeling and what's true for us and what's real and right for us. It was about survival. And it's so profoundly attached to our mindset. Like, our minds are programmed for this survival mechanism. So very quickly we learn, like, if I do this, that means that. It might mean if I'm too loud, it means a loss of attention, or it means some sort of scolding. It means there's like a rupture in my connection to my primary resource of love and attention.
Yeah.
So I'm going to learn to quiet the loud part of myself and forevermore act from that place, because it's programmed in my mind as a condition of working through the world with this closed down part of myself. And it applies in our relating with each other, but it applies to every other relationship. So when we start to close down that part of ourselves, we start operating from this part that's like got something in the basement. Like, the truth of us is like relegated to some form of the basement, and we're not operating with our full expansive self. We're operating with this conditioning or this pattern of codependency, and it's insidious. We'll go through our entire lives wondering why we're not feeling connected or resourced or understood or fully met, because we are experiencing our life with this outward focus and projection of constant vigilance of like, is that the thing? Did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? How does that land for them? Instead of, how does it feel in my body? How do I feel? So the unwinding of this is starting to come back to our truth, come back to ourselves. And there's a lot of pieces to it. It's not just like, I'm going to just stop people pleasing and I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to speak my truth, or whatever that is, because that's like the other side of the pendulum. There's the coming home to like creating safety within yourself and within your nervous system, which is a big part of understanding the stories that you tell yourself and being able to shift your mindset to really coming back to the truth. So it's finding all of those places where we've disengaged from life out of safety, and then bringing them back online and living in that liberated experience. And I know that you did a lot of this work. I mean, you've been doing this for a really long time, like starting from many years before you were relating with Mark, but this was like the sort of big catalyst that was like, that sort of blew up the whole story.
Right, and that's the journey.
Yeah.
Step by step, like as we increase our capacity to meet certain parts of ourselves or parts that maybe are in a blind spot. Like the more safety, the more capacity we have in our nervous system, the more we can tend to the deeper layers. And that's where I was getting in my relationship with Mark. There was actually, for me, a lot of internal safety that I had cultivated through cultivating friendship and sisterhood with a community of like-minded women, through my own building of my own financial foundation so that I could be self-reliant, because that for me was an important piece to unhook from codependent patterns, because I didn't trust that I was competent or that I could take care of myself. And that was like a very old ancestral intergenerational narrative that, wow, it took me so long to kind of build that internal foundation. And there's all these little layers to this process of unhooking from codependency, of rocking the family system, because the survival instructions that this system has been operating on have been in place for likely hundreds of years. Yeah. And so when you come in and you're like, okay, so triangulation isn't going to work, people pleasing, passivity, a dishonoring of my boundaries. Like, I remember my family being like,
who are you? What is happening? This is not
what
how we do things.
Going on? Yeah. And it's just like when all of that like comes, when we liberate our energy or our consciousness from having to manage the external and return back into right responsibility of like, okay, I actually can take a little bit more responsibility for my energy, for my choices, for how I show up, for how I relate. And there's so much freedom and relief in that. And also that can be a very vulnerable and scary AF place to be, because you're like, well, that was familiar and that felt quote unquote safe in my system because it's familiar. That doesn't mean it actually, from like a somatic nervous system level, feels safe, is safe, but it just codes as familiar equals safe, or I know how to manage this environment. So I just want to name that. And that's why I really love your containers, like, because we need these containers to hold us as we meet these edges.
Yeah.
As we meet the parts that are like, ooh, I'm just actually going to revert back to that.
Yeah, totally. And to have like a support system. So I appreciate you bringing up that point, because sometimes I think this part is overlooked in personal development, that, oh, you just like shift your mindset and you do some affirmations and you feel okay. And there's a part of it that you're going to feel okay. And then you're also going to have this major confrontation of the entire life that you've lived and how everything's been operating. And so the way that I imagine it is like, you're driving down the highway of life in your car and everything's like great. And you're like, yeah, this is really awesome. Life is pretty good, right? I mean, like, could be better, but it's okay. And then something happens and it forces you to slam on the brakes, whether it's a rupture in your relationship, you lose your job, you have a health scare, there's a global pandemic, there's like something that comes into your field of vision as you're driving along life. You have to slam on the brakes. And you realize all of this shit from like under the seats, from the back of the trunk, flies forward. And you're kind of stunned for a second there. And you're like, oh my God, there's a lot here that I didn't even know was here. Like old cups or old like shoes or gym stuff or whatever it is. Oh, yeah. Metaphorically speaking, of all of the parts of ourselves that we've relegated into the shadows, all of the things that we haven't really addressed, all of the yeses we said yes to when really we meant no, or all of the things that we did out of integrity with our truth to accommodate somebody else. Yeah. And then we're forced to look at it and we're like, this is messy. This is uncomfortable. I have to clean this stuff up. And to do this work on your own is confronting. And it takes quite a bit of courage, even to do it in a group container. So acknowledging the courage that it takes to shift things, the courage it takes to look at things, because everything is now different. When you start to take that garbage out, you create more space in your car, but there might have been some attachment to those things. Okay, now we're getting, the analogies getting a little bit weird and squirrely, but
I'm like, I'm still here for it. I'm in the car.
So you're in the car, we're together, there's shit all over the place. We had an accident, something happened. But even when you do the work, there's always another layer, and that's the beauty and the challenge of being a human, because there's this constant evolution that's available to us in the creative human 3D make stuff happen in the world sort of sense that we have to move through with our minds. And then there's this other part of us that's our soul, our divinity, that is like calling us for this greater expression, that's calling us for this expansive experience. That's what our dreams are, the carrot sticks that are dragging us through. Yes, there is attachment to the shit you forgot about. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
there's this polarity of like wanting these big things, like a deep, passionate relationship, a really fulfilling career, all of this stuff. And then there's also this contracted fear of like, but all I know is the safety of this container. And it feels really uncomfortable to move beyond it. So what would you say to somebody who is like, either has like foot on the brake and like things have blown up, there's shit everywhere, or somebody who's like, there might be some things that I can start looking at before I have to slam on the brakes and stop?
Oh, the wisdom of those moments where the slamming on the brake and it kind of hit the wall and you're just like, okay, this is not sustainable. Well, I would say first and foremost, you're not alone.
Yeah. No.
Gosh, we are humans, and our minds and the way our nervous system and survival instructions operate. We are like, for me, I am so stubborn, Leah. I don't know about for you. Like
100%. I'm like, what's the hardest way to learn something? I'll do that twice and then maybe get the lesson.
Oh my God. I always crack myself up. Like even after my divorce, like I just want to name something, like, because I think what you're saying in your framework and why I love it so much is there's a deepening out of codependence into soul dependence. There's a deepening into this connection to your own soul, your own path, to divine source, whatever word you utilize for that connection, that we need to remember in order to unhook.
Yeah.
And it's this slowing down process, like touching the brakes before you hit the wall. It's like slowing down, actually.
Yeah.
To really sit with and to be with, okay, what's here? What can I tend to? And what type of support or who in my life is living in a way, lifestyle, relationally, that is modeling or templating out something different?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, for me, that's always been the invitation. And that's why I always, and I continue to work with those who are called into my field out of resonance. It's like, we have to, one, embody the work ourselves. And so the invitation there is like, okay, who in your life are you being attracted to or drawn to or resonate with, who can potentially support you on this path? We all need guides. Yeah. I've had so many mentors on my path, and they've almost been like the divine angels at the right time, where it's like, it's all here. Slow down, get really clear about what it is that you're looking for and what type of support you need, and then open a little bit. Like, how can I get curious, but also how can I actually claim that that's something that I need? Like, I need support with this area. That within and of itself is a huge step, because then it opens a doorway. And then all of those guides, unseen and seen, come in and be like, finally, we've been waiting for you.
We've been literally like banging on your door. Yeah.
Hello. Like, I remember it towards the end. For me, I receive auditory messages from my guides and from yes, from my soul. And I'll never forget, like towards the very end of my relationship 1.0 with Mark, I remember very clearly dropping in and saying, stop hooking in. And I didn't even know what that meant. And I was like, what? And I remember it like reoriented my whole consciousness of like, oh shit, I'm hooking in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm hooking into him and his energy, and we're like just playing this nice little wounds roundabout wound spiral. We're just like, okay, stop hooking in. And it was like, this is an invitation to reconnect to that, to soul, to something deeper, to something wiser. And I don't know where I was going. Did I get off on track? Did I go into a vortex?
No, you're doing it. I'm following you. Still in the car with you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I would say slow things down a bit. Get curious. Ask yourself what type of support you're looking for and who in your life is modeling that, and reach out, extend a hand, open the door.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. Open the door. And I talk about this a lot. Like, it takes 10 seconds of courage to like the door could be open. You're like, that's the person that resonates. That feels like the next step I need to take. But then it's like 10 seconds of courage to actually cross the threshold and start moving towards that new path. Because otherwise it's like, cool, there's a door.
Yeah.
Love that. There's an option for me, but I'm not willing to take it. And that was my life. Talk about learning things hard. Like first it was like becoming disabled, like my career being taken away. And I'm like, yeah, I should probably look internally for this because I feel like I've lost a part of myself, not having my job. I know that that's not who I am, but I don't know who I am without it. So I'm just going to double down and go to church more and become like Susie Homemaker and the best housewife I can.
Double down, baby.
Bake more, like all of that. And then that carried on until one of those auditory messages where it was like, you're in your dream house. You have all the things that you ever thought you wanted. All of the external validation is in front of you. And soul comes in and says, not for another second. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean not for another second? And it's like, you split into, your mind is like, we're losing it. She's gone crazy. Your soul is like, finally, fuck, she's listening.
We got through.
Yeah, they're like, we got through. Now keep talking. And then there's this whisper and the door opens and I'm looking around seeing like everything I thought I wanted on my Pinterest board and realizing like I am devoid of feeling so empty, disconnected from it all. I don't know whose life this is. Obviously, I created it because I made all these decisions. But that's what I mean about the operation of this codependency. It will lead you down a path that is not the path you're meant to be walking. It's the path that your mind thinks you should be walking until you get to that point. So if you can start slowing down before and being like, maybe there's more out there for me. Maybe there's something else. Let me just get curious about it instead of having to have one of those moments where it's like, I've gone too far. I'm like at the edge. There's a cliff. I need to like throw myself off of it. You can arrest the pain. You can like pause before you lose it all or have the big rupture or have the huge dramatic breakdown. You can start to make small shifts by turning inward, by tuning in and like, what does it sound like to hear the voice of my soul? What does it sound like to like connect with my truth? What does my soul sound like? Is it auditory? Is it sensory? Is it visual? Like I get all of those things. And at first I just thought, well, it's the devil or something. I don't know what's happening. Until you know what it is, you can't really listen and follow through, but it's meant to guide you to where you're meant to be.
Yeah. I love when you said this split between the mind and the body. The mind's like, oh my gosh, she's lost it. I literally thought, I mean, and this is why we need spiritual frameworks woven back into our understanding of our human experience, is because when we go through initiations like that and we aren't contained or we don't have a guide, oh my gosh, the narratives that come in and interfere with the process are gnarly. It's just like,
it was a painful 10 years of like patting myself through the dark, like I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. And I'm like, if only I had somebody to say, boom, here it is.
Yeah, here's a map.
Here's a
like
map.
we're all gonna walk it, but it's like, here's at least a general guideline of what you're going to be navigating as you go through this initiatory process to come back home to your essence, to your soul connection, to your path. And what I also just wanted to know, because I don't know if I don't share these stories very often, but apparently when I'm with you, Leah, I like to talk about all the soul stuff, which is awesome, because it's really what has been guiding my whole life, you know?
Yeah.
Is in the aftermath of my rupture with my ex-husband when I was married and then was getting divorced, my consciousness was so in a fear state. I mean, it was like contracted to like this small. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where it's like you're in such survival where you're like, my life is over, I'm going to die, that your consciousness is like right here. And
divorce will do that for sure.
Divorce is, woof, man. Yeah.
It's brutal.
It's a gnarly one, especially in the context of our current cultural paradigm of how we relate towards divorce and endings. And oh my gosh, the religious aspect. It's like, it's for real. But I remember laying in bed in my parents' home, of course, because, you know, you always have to have that element in the story. But I was, and my whole nervous system, my whole body is shaking. And I'm just like, I'm pretty much done. My life is over. I cannot see anything past this future that I had planned of like who I was, how I was going to operate, how I was going to survive. And all I heard cut through the chaos like a sword right into my heart. You created all this because you were afraid. And I was just like,
well, fuck.
well, fuck. I mean, okay, well, where was the manual on how to understand the unconscious mind and the conditioning that I'd been given, not only from my family system, but my lineage? And like, I was so angry after that, Leah. So,
oh, I feel you. I had a very similar situation. And then there was like the blame outward, but also the blame inward.
oh,
I was
totally, yeah.
Yeah, when my ex had, well, we were separated at the time and he moved out and I was sitting in this giant house that I was like, we need to build this house. It's so blah, 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 blah. This is what I need and then I'll be happy. That was like the final when I finally got the thing I thought would make it all better. And then I was like, oh no, this is not good. Be by myself with my dog, big house, empty bedrooms. And I had the same feeling of like, oh shit, I did this. I did all of this. There was so much guilt. Like, I married him. I made us do this. I forced this. I said this was the way to go. And I had no idea that I was following a roadmap that wasn't mine, that I was doing the checklist of acceptable behaviors and realizing like, nobody told me. So there was the outward blame of like, nobody told me. And then there was the inward blame of shame and guilt of feeling like, but I did all of this and da da da. So there's like a huge forgiveness piece that has to come with unwinding from this and the acknowledgement that, like I said at the outset, like you can't give something that you don't have. You can't do something that you don't know. But once you know, then it's your responsibility to start doing things differently. It's that door opening. You can read all the books and have all of the information, listen to all the podcasts, do all the lives you want. But if you don't take that 10 seconds of courage to put it into action, to take the next scary step, and it's all going to be scary because it's all unknown. It's all outside of your comfort zone. Then we stay in the same place. So we are, I'm on the time watch here because I know we're like getting to the end here. So I want to sort of wrap it up just to say that I'm so incredibly grateful and excited. First of all, grateful for having this conversation, grateful for you joining in the Live Free Lifestyle to share your wisdom on this. And so excited to have you sharing this as a really potent workshop inside of the Live Free Lifestyle. It is the first time I was just thinking about it this morning. I've been running this program since 2019. It's the first time I'm inviting in guest experts. Last year, I invited in breathwork, which was a really big part, but inviting in these guest experts to have more, I guess, focused, potent medicine. And the other thing that I think is so important too is just having different perspectives, different women's experiences, different stories, different versions, because we're not alone, but we don't know that we're not alone until we start to see other people who have had that experience or who have moved through similar things. So I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you for this conversation, for being so gracious with your time, your energy, your gifts, and your wisdom. And fuck, I'm just so excited for this.
Me too. Thanks so much, Leah, for inviting me.
So welcome.
To have this conversation, to dance with you this morning. This has been so much fun. And I look forward to more in your container and life alongside you. Looking forward to continuing to weave the web.
Yes, yes, yes. The magical web of soul-aligned living. That's what it is.
Yep.
What it is. Oh, my dear. I love you so much. I'm going to let you go. I know you have other things to do. So do I. And I hope you have a beautiful, blessed Valentine's Day. And sending you and Mark big hugs. So much love.
Thanks, Leah. Love you.
You're welcome.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.